Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett. And before going any further, I need to mention that there will be spoilers in this review. So if you haven't watched this episode, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video unless you really want to be spoiled. With that out of the way, let's get on with the review. Chapter 5 begins at a meat processing facility run by Klatooinians. And almost immediately after establishing the setting, in walks the Mandalorian himself, Din Djarin, and it is clear that he's back to his bounty hunting ways at this point, and he has the tracking fob and puck to prove that he is in the right place. But this bounty is not going to cooperate willingly, and a fight breaks out. Mando suddenly ignites the Darksaber and starts fending off the various attackers. But he is clumsy in wielding this ancient weapon, and he ends up injuring himself in the leg. Ultimately, he wins the fight and chops his bounty in two. He then takes off the head and puts it in a bag as evidence of the kill. He leaves this place, and we see the title reveal, Return of the Mandalorian, which was absolutely thrilling to see and a somewhat unexpected surprise. Next, we get a shot in space, showing that this location is a giant man-made ring-shaped city with many levels. We follow Din as he limps his way through this complex, and he enters an elevator which leads to a sort of upscale social club, where Mando is to meet up with his employer. His reward from this meeting is not money, but information about how to reach the lower levels. We then see him leave this establishment, and we follow his journey tracking a specific location marked with the symbol of a mythosaur skull, the same symbol we see on Boba Fett's shoulder armor. Eventually, the long climb downward leads to the Mandalorian armorer, and Mando falls to the ground due to his leg injury. We also find Paz Vizsla here, who attends to the wound on Mando's leg. The armorer then asks what weapon caused this wound, at which Din hands over the Darksaber to them. The armorer then gives a bit of a history lesson about the weapon. She mentions that the weapon was created over 1,000 years ago by Tar Vizsla, who is both a Mandalorian and a Jedi. Mando then tells her that he has met a Jedi, and therefore he has completed his quest of returning the child to its own kind. She then invites Din to rejoin their covert as part of the Way. Mando also reveals to them how he came upon the Darksaber by defeating Moff Gideon in combat. The armorer then inquires about the Beskar spear, which she questions the nature of because, according to her, Beskar should only be used for armor and not for weapons. So Din hands over the spear and asks that it be reforged into armor. At this point, Mando mentions Bo-Katan Kryze, to which the armorer responds that hers is a cautionary tale of someone who should never have been given the Darksaber without winning it in combat. She essentially blames Bo-Katan for the fall of Mandalore because she had supposedly lost the way. We then get a flashback sequence of the Night of 1,000 Tears, in which Mandalore was laid waste by the Empire. And I gotta say that this part of the episode was really epic to see depicted on screen, with Imperial TIE bombers completely obliterating the Mandalorian society. Now, the armorer claims that the only Mandalorians who escaped the Purge were those who held to the Creed, but we actually know that this isn't true because Bo-Katan and several of her owls also survived and went a different way. So following the Creed is not the only way. And we know that they all share a common goal of reclaiming Mandalore as their homeworld. It's interesting to observe the different philosophies here, and all of this will very likely be a point of contention in Mando Season 3. The armorer then asked Din Djarin what she should forge from the Beskar spear, and he asks that it be made into something for the foundling Grogu. So the spear gets mounted down, and we don't actually see what's created. We only know that it's something very small and wrapped in a cloth pouch. We then get a weapons training session between the armorer and Mando, in which he is trying to fight with the Darksaber. And he is struggling because apparently this weapon has an unusual weight to it, which makes it heavy and kind of a struggle to fight with. Paz Vizsla sees how much Mando is struggling with the weapon and decides that this is his opportunity to take it for himself as part of his family legacy. So he challenges Din to combat, and he accepts. This duel goes back and forth for a bit until Vizsla knocks Din to the ground and picks up the Darksaber. But Vizsla is no more skilled with handling this weapon either, and eventually Mando outmaneuvers Vizsla's clumsiness and wins the fight. The armorer then chimes in and says that it is done, and asks each of them if they have ever broken the creed and removed their helmet. And Din cannot lie, so he's forced to admit that he's broken this rule. Unfortunately, this means he is expelled from their covert, but they do allow him to leave, still holding the Darksaber. So it's clear that Din Djarin feels somewhat disgraced at this point, and he boards a Starliner which is destined for Tatooine. And there's a bit of a hilarious scene where Mando has to relinquish all of his weapons before boarding the flight. Now, while on the Starliner, he takes out the cloth pouch holding the Beskar object, and we can notice that the way it's tied together very much resembles the shape of Grogu's head and ears. He obviously misses the child very much, and this moment is actually quite moving. Mando eventually arrives at Mos Eisley Spaceport and reclaims his weapons. Next, we cut to Peli Motto's docking bay, and she is struggling with a womp rat who is attacking one of her droids, a BD unit similar to the one that we see in the video game Jedi Fallen Order. Mando shoots the creature and frees Motto. So Din has come back here because he apparently got a message from her that she has a replacement for the Razor Crest, which, if you recall, was blown to bits in Mando Season 2. Din hands her a bunch of credits, and she leads him over to a ship which is all in pieces. He takes a look at it and calls it a pile of junk, but Peli explains to him that it is a Naboo N1 Starfighter, which is pre-Empire and has the capability of hyperspace jumps. This little sales pitch is actually pretty hilarious, but she does actually keep Mando listening long enough for him to see some potential in this ship. So they both get to work on rebuilding the Starfighter, adding a lot of custom parts, which they acquire with help from the Jawa scavengers. One of the parts that they add is called a Turbonic Venturi Power Assimilator, which is basically the sci-fi version of a supercharger that one might install on a hot rod. And I got to say, this whole sequence reminded me very much of Mad Max, where vehicles were hobbled together using bits and pieces from various sources. And the end result was a very Last of the V8 Interceptors vibe to it, which, if you recall from the original Mad Max film, was put together using bits and pieces. And it also had the supercharger extending out of the hood of the car, very much like the way this Naboo Starfighter does. So it does seem like the filmmakers took inspiration from that series of movies. Once finished, Mando takes the ship for a test drive, including a run through Beggar's Canyon, and then up into orbit, which he flies a little bit too close to a passenger transport, and he catches the attention of two New Republic X-Wing fighters. One of the pilots we've seen before, and he recognizes Mando's voice, and he ultimately decides to let him off with a warning. But before he can ask him any questions about his experience with the Razor Crest, Mando hits the turbo and blasts off, leaving the two X-Wings in the dust. Upon returning to the docking bay, Peli asks Mando how things went, to which Mando replies, "Wizard." At this point, Fennec Shand shows up and offers Din a job being muscle for Boba Fett in the upcoming conflict. Mando agrees to do it, but it will be on the house, since he still feels like he owes Fennec and Fett for their critical role in helping him rescue Grogu. And then he tells Fennec that before he can take the job, he has to pay a visit to a little friend. Overall, I thought this episode was amazing. It's basically a bonus episode of The Mandalorian, which sets up a bunch of important potential stuff for Mando Season 3, and it also establishes Din's new ship, which I fully expect to play a role in the Boba Fett finale. The fact that they chose like a hot rod modified Naboo Starfighter for this is really awesome, and it's a wonderful callback to the prequels. And there was also that run through Beggar's Canyon, which referenced the pod race scene in Episode 1. As for what's next, it does seem like we will get a reunion scene between Din Djarin and Grogu in the series, but I'm not too sure how much of it they will delve into in terms of the story. After all, there are only 2 episodes left in order to conclude the story of Boba's conflict with the Pikes. But I suppose it is possible that they may end on a cliffhanger that will tie into Mando Season 3 or even the Ahsoka series. As for the mystery of what the Beskar item is that was forged for Grogu, it's difficult to say, but I'm guessing that whatever it is probably features the symbol of the Mudhorn, just like on Din Djarin's shoulder armor. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. That's pretty much all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more reviews of Star Wars series like the Book of Boba Fett, think about subscribing because I will be covering more of this stuff in the future, so stay tuned. Until next time, I hope you're having a great day, and may the Force be with you. Thanks for watching.